Hello, and welcome to another textile and dyeing adventure. So we actually had our first snow of the season, and it came super duper early this year. My family's really excited about that because that means that we can do some snow dyeing. Snow dyeing is essentially the same thing as ice dyeing, which is our really fun summer dyeing activity, but instead of using ice, we're gonna use snow, and it's gonna be awesome. So I just pulled up to my parents' house, and we plan on having just a really fun, chill weekend of winter dyeing adventures. So let's get to it.
So let me show you what it is that I'm going to be dyeing today. Whenever I'm at the thrift store, I'm always on the hunt for high quality white cotton clothes to dye. And I've been collecting and holding on to these warmer, more wintry pieces all year for exactly this occasion. First up is this beautiful white quilted jacket that I found at the thrift store. This felt like such a lucky find, I just couldn't believe it. It's all white and the fabric is 100% cotton, so it is the perfect candidate for dyeing, especially for a winter project. Next up, I have this super chunky, oversized white knit sweater that I also found at the thrift store. It has a little bit of staining towards the middle, but besides that, it's in amazing condition. And also, I'm gonna be dyeing it, so a stain doesn't really matter to me at all. It just means that I got it even cheaper, and I'm also saving a garment that probably would have just gone to the landfill otherwise. It's just a whole bunch of wins. Next up, I have these cotton sweatpants, which are super soft. I have a few similar pairs that you've probably seen me wear in other videos, and normally I'm not a sweatpants in public type of person, but I found when they're tastefully tie-dyed, I think they can make a cold weather outfit even cozier and even more fun. So they've actually become a wardrobe staple for me, and I'm always now looking for more white pairs to add to my collection. I also brought with me some white quilting cotton fabrics just to do a little bit of experimenting. These are just the generic white fat quarters that you can buy directly from Dharma Trading Company, and I just wanted to use them as a blank canvas to play around with some folding techniques. They came in a 4-pack, so I have 4 little white rectangles. And lastly, I have this white cotton cable knit sweater, which I didn't want to put on and model for you because I was getting really cold. But I was really excited to dye this because I had a really specific idea in mind that I wanted to explore that involved these cables. Will it actually turn out? You'll just have to wait and see. My little sister Tiana also had a pile of white clothes that she had collected over time and was really excited to transform. This included 2 pairs of white cotton jeans, one with a ton of pockets, and one super wide leg pair.
This was Free People and I got it for $7.
Woo!
She also had this cotton tank top, a long button-down shirt, and this absolutely massive cotton quilt. She wanted to dye this quilt as a Christmas gift for one of her friends and had a really specific plan in mind for how she would decorate it. Then we started tying up all of our stuff.
This one has such interesting little quilted shapes. I thought it could be fun to kind of put some designs in these empty spaces using some rubber bands.
I don't know why I always do this to myself, but I just really love the look of this style of tie-dye, which creates really fun concentric rings. But it's just so tedious to tie every single one of these little rubber bands. It takes me absolutely forever and my hands always hurt after, but in my opinion, it's so worth it. My sister also has this really specific way of folding and tying up things that she loves to do, which is what she ended up doing for a couple of her items.
I guess she finished her pants.
We basically spent the entire day folding and tying and preparing all of our garments to be dyed. A big part of what I love so much about this activity is that there's really no wrong way to do any of it, because no matter what, the results always end up amazing. So we just tried out a whole bunch of different things, like different folding patterns, different ways to tie things up, different resists that we could use like popsicle sticks, paint mixers, or wooden shapes. And we just had a beautiful time sitting in the sun, listening to music, working with our hands, and exploring. And even my sister's dog, Chives, joined in on the fun. For Tiana's tank top, she tied it up with the same tiny rubber band technique that I was using for my jacket. And for this pair of jeans, she folded them up super tightly and then sandwiched them between 2 pieces of cardboard and a ton of rubber bands. And this created a really interesting resist effect. Then for this dress, I think she just kind of folded it and wrapped it up, and you know what? I actually have absolutely no idea what she did here. My sister ended up tying up like 6 different things before I could even finish my one jacket, if that's any indicator of how long this took me. But eventually, I got my quilted jacket all tied up and ready for dyeing. It definitely looks kind of ridiculous now, but hopefully you can kind of get the gist of what I did. I just made those tiny little rubber band circles all over my jacket within the quilted pattern, but I did it so that they're fairly randomly scattered all over the jacket, and hopefully that's gonna turn out super cool. Next, for my giant white sweater, I kind of felt like it was too chunky to actually tie it up, so I thought that keeping things simple and giving it an all-over organic, colorful look would be really nice. So I put it in a plastic tub, and then I tried to strategically scrunch and squish the fabric together so that it would create some really interesting folds and layers which would take the dye in interesting ways. I then took a break from clothes and I decided to play with one of my fabric swatches, which I folded up accordion style into roughly 1-inch pleats. I then folded this on itself a few times and then secured it with some rubber bands. And then, just for the heck of it, I stuck it in with my big sweater. My sister then got to work on her quilt.
A butterfly!
This quilt was going to be a gift to her masseuse friend. So she wanted to color the quilt in the style of the 7 chakras. So she made one little tower of concentric rubber band rings for each of the 7 colors and then had them run down the middle of the blanket. And while she worked on that, I folded up my sweatpants a whole bunch of times and then secured them tightly with a bunch of wooden paint mixers. How is this gonna turn out? I had absolutely no idea, but I was really excited to see what might happen. Then for my cable knit sweater, I just kind of shoved it into a plastic bin and distributed the fabric evenly, because I was gonna try to paint some dye onto this later and just needed to keep things contained for now. And here are all the pieces that I was working with. I have my big quilted jacket, my cabled sweater, my chunky sweater and fabric swatch, my sweatpants, and then the other 3 fat quarters of cotton fabric which I tied up off camera. These are totally random and totally experimental. This one was folded into triangles and secured with a really big wooden circle. This one was folded into squares and secured with some popsicle sticks. And this one was folded like an accordion again, but this time secured with some paint mixing sticks. And now that everything's all tied up, it's ready to be dyed. For our dyes, my sister and I both brought our collections of Dharma fiber reactive dye powders. But before we could apply the colors, we first needed to apply the snow. This process was fairly self-explanatory. Basically, we just need to fill each container with a thick layer of snow. If you've never seen this kind of dyeing before, you might be wondering why snow might be involved in a dye project in the first place. We could totally just dip our fabrics in dye or paint on the colors and we'd have some pretty cool outcomes. But instead, we're using this snow to help us add a little bit of chaos and a little bit of unpredictability to our fabrics. So first, we add a layer of the snow. Then we sprinkle the dye powder and a fixative on top. And then as the snow melts, it takes those dye powder particles, breaks them apart, and spreads them around the fabric in super random ways. And this creates a really unique and a really specific dyed effect. For this first spin, which is my quilted jacket, I sprinkled on a whole bunch of dye in the color shiitake mushroom, which is one of my all-time favorites. And then I also added just a little bit of lilac to add some pops of purple. Then I sprinkled on a whole bunch of soda ash, which is the chemical that's going to bind these dyes to the cotton fabrics. For my super chunky sweater, I decided to sprinkle on some dye in the color Timberwolf underneath the snow. That way, some of the dye is already going to be in contact with the fabric before the snow even has a chance to melt, and that's going to make those colors just a little bit more dramatic. Then I sprinkled the whole thing with some dragon's heart with the hope that this would turn out as like a mostly greenish sweater with some black accents. My sister then dyed her button-down tunic shirt with the color avocado, which is a mix of greens, and thundercloud, which is a mix of gray and black. This is her tank top, to which she added razzle dazzle and coral pink. Underneath all of this snow is my pair of sweatpants, and I decided to add some coral pink and some lilac to these.
Aww. This is a peace offering.
And I also tried my best to collect all the dye that had blown into the nearby snow. Back inside, we also did a little bit of more direct dye application. This basically means that we mixed the dye powders with water to create a dye solution and then applied this directly to parts of our fabrics. Tiana mixed up the colors of the chakras to paint her little mountains, and I experimented with that cable sweater by painting dye colors directly onto the cables. I decided to try something a little bit different, and I first mixed my marigold and chartreuse dyes with a little bit of sodium alginate, which is a dye thickener. And my thought was that this was going to help the dye stay put exactly where I painted it. And I spent quite a lot of time painting each and every cable. And after covering my cabled sweater with a layer of snow, I then sprinkled a whole bunch of dye in the color Warrior Princess on top. This was supposed to be a mix of greens and pinks, but something was kind of off about this dye. Then I used up all the leftover dyes my sister had mixed for her quilt, and I pipetted them onto my folded up cotton fabrics. I didn't really have a specific plan in mind and just kind of played around. Then I covered these with a layer of snow, better black, and avocado. And here are our beautifully colorful snow piles. And we left these alone to sit and melt and do their thing overnight. These need to fully melt and then sit for an additional 24 hours before we can unwrap them. And that long wait is truly painful because of course we're just dying to see how everything turned out. One absolutely agonizing wait later, and mostly everything was melted and ready to go. Some of the larger things needed a little bit more time, but in the meantime, we were itching to start unwrapping and rinsing, which is always such a magical experience. First, my sister unwrapped her tank top.
Ooh. Hey, brother. What the fuck? Where did that color come from? Wait, that's such a surprise. What a surprise. You never know what you're gonna get when you ice it.
Cute. Throw it in the wash. And then I unwrapped my cotton fabrics.
Ooh. Ooh, did you know it looked like that? Whoa. That's really pretty.
I'm really excited about that one.
Really cool.
When the fabric first comes out of a snow or an ice dye bath, it always looks really dark and kind of muddy, and you don't actually know how it's going to turn out until after the first wash. But honestly, it's still so satisfying to finally untie it and unfold it just to get a glimpse of what you made. I do have to remind myself though that it's not finished yet and I can't get too attached to how it looks right now because the first wash can still bring even more surprises.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Whoa.
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Squibbity dibbity. Whoa. Squibbity. Oh.
Not as
We
impressive.
went from the whoa to aw.
Ooh. Ooh. That's beautiful.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Did you do a pattern or just random?
Kind of random.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Spoiler, this is one of those pieces that ends up looking totally different after the wash. It's super dark and super pink here when it's fresh out of the dye. So in this moment, I was like, oh cool, a pink jacket. But definitely wait to see later on how it looks after the wash. We then threw everything together in the wash on a regular cycle with several extra rinses, and then on a regular dry cycle. And then everything was ready for the reveal. Here's how my sister's chakra-inspired quilt turned out, which is just so beautiful. It's a really sophisticated rainbow, which I think is actually really hard to pull off, and she did an amazing job. And she gifted it to her masseuse friend, who is so excited to have this special piece in her office. And here are how my 4 quilting cotton pieces turned out. This was the one that was hanging out in the same greenish dye bath as my chunky sweater with the little accordion pleats. And here's the fabric that was also pleated but secured with the long paint mixing sticks. This one has kind of a stained glass look to it, which I really love. This is the fabric that was tied up with a bunch of popsicle sticks. I thought this one was gonna have super dramatic, crisp stripes just because of those sticks, but things ended up really organic looking, which I really like. And this one has to be my favorite. This is the one that I folded up in little triangles and secured with the wooden circle cutouts. And I just love how bold and graphic and in your face the whole thing is. I think these turned out super fun, and I'm really excited to sew them into something someday. I had to film the rest of my reveal stuff the next day, and of course it rained, so all the snow disappeared, which was such a bummer. But anyway, here are how all of my sister's clothing pieces turned out. Even though she didn't plan for them to go together to make outfits, somehow everything ended up coordinating perfectly, and everything looks amazing. And here are the results of my own dyeing experiments. This is my super chunky knit sweater, which I wanted to give kind of an organic marbled look. I did this by scrunching up the fabric, sprinkling on some dark dye, covering it with snow, and then sprinkling it with a ton of green dye. And I'm really happy with the outcome. I especially really like these bright pops of purple, which came from that darker dye. This is definitely a sweater that I know I'm gonna wear a lot. And here is my quilted jacket. Remember how it was almost neon pink before the wash? Now it's this super interesting mix of browns, reds, greens, grays, and turquoise. It's kind of earthy, but also kind of funky, and I really love it. And the tied up circles are so interesting. Some are super visible, some are super subtle, and some didn't show up literally at all. Tiana said that the circles make it look like popped bubble wrap, which I think is really funny. And overall, I'm super happy with this one. I am definitely going to be on the hunt for some more quilted pieces in the future because this was so fun to work with and to be inspired by.
I don't feel like putting these on because I don't want to just like drag them through the mud, so.
Another win. These sweatpants turned out so fun. I was definitely surprised by how much of the original fabric was left undyed, but I think it kind of works as a funky stripe. The stripes also kind of look like bones in a weird way, like x-rays. Am I the only one who sees that? Regardless, I know these are gonna get a ton of wear, and I'm super excited about that. And here's my biggest of the whole video. This was the cabled sweater where I spent absolutely ages hand painting each cable with green and yellow thickened dye. And then I dust the whole thing with a dye that was supposed to be mostly deep dark green with some pops of pink. So why is this sweater like purple, pink, and yellow almost exclusively? And where did all of those hand painted cables go? I have no explanation for what happened here. Like literally nothing went as planned. This could not have been more of a surprise, but you know what? I'm actually still really happy with it. It was not at all what I intended, but I still think it turned out really cool. So this was both a total failure and a big win at the same time. And overall, I'm really happy with how every single piece that I made turned out.
The snow is gone, but its memory will last forever. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this week's video. If you want to stick around and see what I'm up to in the world of fiber and textiles, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye!